Dan and I have just had a little girl, which makes it even more important knowing that she can hopefully grow up in a world where women are celebrated in every single shape, every single size, no matter where you're from, no matter what your story is, where you've been. There's a brand out there that can speak to you just in a normal, authentic way that doesn't make you feel uncomfortable.
Welcome to Shopify Masters, your companion for starting and building a business, the podcast brought to you by Shopify. I'm Shuang Esther Shan, and today's episode features Dan and Mel Marston, the life and business partners behind Lounge Underwear, a multi-million direct-to-consumer giant that's challenging the intimates and loungewear industry. You'll hear from Dan and Mel as they share how they designed Lounge specifically to succeed in e-commerce, their commitments to sustainability and inclusivity, as well as how they're expanding the team while maintaining its core values and culture. Before we chat with Dan and Mel, I wanted to chat with you about shipping. Did you know that you can buy shipping labels at home, print them with a regular printer, get shipping insurance within the United States, and receive discounted shipping rates with certain carriers, all with Shopify Shipping? There are no additional fees, carrier account, or app required. This is included with your Shopify plan. So check out Shopify Shipping today at shopify.com/ship. Now, on to our show. Lounge has been in the news lately because of its successful 2020. The team reached close to $19 million in sales, a 300% increase from the year prior, and they also expanded from 20 to 80 employees. But at the heart of it all is Dan and Mel, the husband and wife team that wants to build a business with impact. And they did so by specifically creating a business model that was geared towards social media and e-commerce.
I think the way Lounge was built was very different to other companies that were built at a similar kind of time around, I guess, the boom of social media and these social media brands, because I think a lot of other companies were built around people finding, a kind of a gap in the market where they couldn't find a product that was perfectly fitted to them or suited to them, or just something that they were generally passionate about. Lounge was built in, like I say, a different way, because I'd started up a load of businesses before Lounge and essentially took learnings from all of those. So Lounge was reverse engineered because we knew the perfect way to market a product, but we didn't have that perfect product. So there was loads of criteria that went into it. So it had to be small to ship, even down to the granular element. It had to go into what was classed at the time as a large letter Royal Mail, so we could go globally for relatively cheap. It had to be brandable, so when people posted in it in social media, you knew who it was. Had to have large margins because we didn't have any money at the time. We didn't have any outside investment. Had to be cheap to store because we didn't have any offices or warehouses at the time. Loads of criteria. And it just so happened that it was underwear, and the first triangle design that we sketched up fit around that marketing strategy perfectly. This is kind of a story of two halves. So you've got those business foundations, and then you've got, which is Mel's side, the kind of brand and community and female empowerment side. But admittedly, in the early days, it was about building a solid business, which in turn allowed Mel to obviously build this amazing female community. But it is very much a story of kind of two halves.
We essentially built meaning and realised what we wanted our values to be over time. The name Lounge was batted around, and then we kind of laughed when we came up with the name, because we were literally sat in our living room and it was like, oh, Lounge, yeah, that's it, that's the one. And I guess that kind of story of female empowerment and inviting our community into this space that they felt safe and they felt like they were with their best friends, even though it was in a social space. That came and has developed and evolved as the brand has, essentially. And I guess we've been scaling at such a pace, the way that journey has happened and the values that we can now share with massive social media and wider community has become really powerful.
And I understand you saying that underwear is such an easy to ship item, but entering this market, did it ever feel intimidating because there's already established global brands, there's department stores, you name it. So entering this very saturated market, how did you plan to differentiate your products and your service?
A lot of people obviously say it's a very saturated market. I think when we started, and even probably more so now, short of one or two brands, it doesn't feel like there's any competition out there. Like I say, 5 years ago, there wasn't anyone. Obviously, Victoria's Secrets are the big boys and they're in decline. Short of that, every underwear brand out there feels very archaic. It doesn't feel like they've got a strong brand. A lot of them feel like they're in a mess. They don't know who they cater for. It didn't, and it still doesn't, like I say, short of one or two now, feel like there's any competition, which I think is what makes Lounge so exciting for everyone that works here. Because it feels like we're scratching the surface and doesn't feel like we're in a space where it's like, how are we going to compete with these guys?
But I do think that's kind of the underlying beauty of Dan's personality as well, is that this sounds so cheesy as we're a couple, but he isn't scared of anything. So it kind of means the way we started our journey was with this really calm but underlying confidence that we will make this work. Between you and I, with your yin, I'm yang, we're going to build something powerful here.
And speaking of figuring it out, because I understand, Mel, you have journalism, branding background, and Dan has the business operation background, but the two of you actually didn't have design or fashion background. So how did you start to tackle that aspect of the business in design and production?
It's a good question. I think we're both very in tune anyway as a couple. And although we don't have a design background, we've got good taste, right? So it meant that we knew what we wanted our product to look like. We know what women wanted, and we knew what do I like, what might our community like. And it started with literally just sketches on scrap pieces of paper, didn't it, Dan?
Me and Mel have got very similar taste in regards to, which obviously flows through the brand. And even now, I think with the design team, I'll say to them, I don't know what it is that we need, but when I see it, I'll know. I think one of the beauties around the fact of almost, I guess, being inexperienced and naive to an extent is that you don't follow the trends of everyone else. I think if you brought up through another company, you get stuck in their ways. Whereas because we didn't have any experience, everything we did was so fresh. And it's like from the bat, we didn't do spring, summer, autumn, winter collections. Our collections last forever. And I think that might have been probably a bit of a different strategy of what a lot of people do. And they were bringing out seasons, they'd sell out, they'd bring out another collection. We don't do that. We don't work that way because we weren't brought up in a fashion background, I guess.
That makes a lot of sense, because essentially you are asking for designs, or you're designing things that you wanted to see, but it just so happens weren't in the market.
5 years on, we're still so ingrained in that kind of design element of the brand to ensure that that vision that we had from day one doesn't get lost in then looking around and seeing what's going elsewhere in the market. We stay very focused on what it is that we want Lounge to be and what we want Lounge to offer.
We don't follow trends in any essence. So we don't follow any kind of catwalks. We still, to this day, which was right from the early days, we just build what we think's cool and design what we think's cool and still go with that same strategy. We don't get influenced by anyone. So we just do what we want to do.
So after those initial designs and you're ready to start the store and start selling, how did you convince people to start buying their undergarments online and on your website?
In the very early days, it was influencer marketing and pure influencer marketing. Bear in mind, the landscape of influencer marketing was totally different 5 years ago to what it is now. We were very lucky in regards to we were brought up in a time where e-com was blowing up and then social media joined it and was blowing up. And obviously we've done a lot of things right. And I think we're very good at a lot of things. But timing plays a massive part in any company that grows at our rate. And we had very good timing in regards to there was a space in the market, I feel anyway, and I feel there still is, because I don't feel like there's massive competition. You had social media that was about to boom or was in the middle of booming. And then e-com, it all just, I guess, exploded at the same time.
And it kind of goes back to what Dan said at the beginning of making sure that as soon as you saw that product on an influencer, you knew exactly what it was. That brand recognition was just there instantly. And that was part of that power that allowed us to then build upwards from there.
Mm-hmm. Your influencer marketing is so extensive, because I feel like it's difficult for someone to not see Lounge underwear on Instagram. And it's hard to imagine you had to build that from scratch. So how did you start building this inclusive and empowering community of influencers?
So 5 years ago, we didn't have any money. There was very, very few brands, literally a handful, that were doing influence marketing. So we could essentially test and learn from that space with little to no money, essentially just gifting product at that time. Like I say, it's completely different to what it is now, and just test and learn. So you could try and figure out what type of account worked, with no real investment. If you came into it now, you'd need to have a hell of a lot of knowledge of what you were doing in influencer marketing and a hell of a lot of money. It's just totally different. We were very lucky to be in a space that was very new and essentially test it before it boomed. It was just totally different. And obviously now we've managed to build a massive knowledge base over 5 years in the early days without putting huge amounts of investment in. And it's just scaled, and we've been able to scale that knowledge and that investment as social media scaled.
It's an element of, I think consistency is the right word, but making sure that from day one we built relationships with these influencers that were just young women at the time. They were still learning what it meant for them as well. But we introduced ourselves personally, we explained the brand to them, and we tried to build a connection from the very beginning. So even now, some of the girls that we worked with right at the beginning of our journey, they feel so deeply rooted and connected to what our values are now that the relationship's just so authentic, and that then promoting our product just comes naturally to them because they actually love the product. It's not like, God, how am I going to find a way to show that I kind of like this? And I guess making sure that relationship was built right from the foundations through to where we are now was really, really important.
Mm-hmm. And how did you manage, I guess, tracking so many relationships as you scale? There's, I want to say, like countless influencers. It seems like everybody is posting with their lounge clothing. So how did you track all those relationships, make sure that everything was sent to the right person and it's performing the way that you want it to be?
So that's the secret. Don't give away the secret.
In the early days, we used to track it in regards to like sending out shipments and tracking if people had posted literally by hand manually, just from a database. Me and Mel used to have almost like a traffic light system.
We sat back to back with a different little database with different influencers.
Literally just an Excel document. And then in regards to like an ROI, this is the real tricky bit, because there's still no perfect attribution system in regards to influence marketing. There's obviously ways and means around it. Some obvious ones like discount codes or affiliate links or swipe up links in stories. But this is where, again, because we were growing up in this time, you've got the knowledge and the experience of what works and what doesn't work. And to a degree, it comes down to making a call off the back of that experience of what you think works and doesn't work. If you haven't got a perfect, attribution model and pixel like you can on Facebook or Instagram, you have got to make a judgment call to an extent and think, are they going to add value to my brand? Bearing in mind, it's not always just a monetary value. It's a brand piece as well as an ROI piece.
Definitely.
Yeah. And I can see that the relationship goes beyond just like them receiving a parcel and doing a campaign, because influencers will tag you guys after the link expires or after the campaign, and they continue to post you guys and tag you guys. So it kind of adds to the brand value over time.
The best feeling, obviously, seeing from the early days when you used to see an influencer posting your product, you'd be like, oh my God, that's what we designed. But now the goodness comes when you see someone just organically wearing it. It might just be peeking out of a sheer blouse, or like you see it kind of poking out the top of their jeans, and you think, oh, they genuinely do. They love the product, which makes our whole strategy just that much easier.
I think going back to the relationships piece as well, is that there's very few influencers that we work with just on a one-off basis. We tend to work on extended long contracts to actually build that authentication, I guess. This isn't just a business deal. It's got no value to it. We'd like to say we're trying to build a relationship with these guys and show that they have bought into the brand and it's not just a one-off deal. I think that's where the real value comes into it.
And in addition to this program, you also just have inclusivity within your product offering, your branding and empowerment. What is so important for you guys to make sure that it represents a very inclusive and safe community as well?
The way the brand was started to where we are now, it's, we've been on a huge journey, but I think we wanted to offer more than just product. We didn't want to just offer underwear. It sits in your drawer and you don't really have any real connection to it. I think what we've created is what we call our female family. At the end of the day, we are all different. And I think that sounds like such a basic statement, but as a young woman who's grown through a world where you don't love every single part of yourself, I think what Lounge has almost allowed me to do personally is grab my personality and push it out to our social audience is such a huge portion of women, and kind of speak to them in a very real, just talk like you're talking to your friends, and make sure that because you put underwear on every single day, you want to make sure that you feel amazing in it. And if you can then also feel part of something that is more than just that product, that's pretty powerful. And I mean, Dan and I have just had a little girl, which makes it even more important knowing that she can hopefully grow up in a world where women are celebrated in every single shape, every single size, no matter where you're from, no matter what your story is, where you've been. There's a brand out there that can speak to you just in a normal, authentic way that doesn't make you feel uncomfortable.
Beyond building an inclusive and body-positive community, Dan and Mel wants to leave an impact on the way they run their business by sourcing sustainable materials while also using their platform to raise awareness and funds for breast cancer.
In regards to like a sustainability side of stuff, it's probably about 18 months ago now, we decided at a brand that we were getting to a size where we could start putting that investment into that side of stuff. And I don't think we definitely don't do it from a point of view where we feel like we have to. I think we're very conscious in regards to contribute into helping the world, I guess. And the morals behind it. We made a conscious effort to say, okay, we're going to set ourselves some goals in regards to our product and packaging side of things. So I think within 6 months, we'd essentially moved all of our packaging from virgin materials to either recycled or sustainable materials. So everything from the bags that the product went into, then the mailing bags, to the swing tags, to the returns cards, all went to sustainable options. And then we started to focus on the product, and we're starting to now backdate all of our products to either recycled or sustainable options, ideally recycled options, which a lot of it is. And then I think probably the past 12 months, about 60% of our product that we're launching is made again from sustainable or recycled products. But literally, I think it was a week ago, we've said to ourselves, listen, let's draw a line in the sand. Everything we launch from now on has got to be sustainable or made from recycled products. I think that's, as a brand, how passionate we feel about it. I think you can get a lot of companies that will say, we've got a negative carbon footprint, but they'll just buy the credits associated with that, which is kind of like a cop-out. But we're trying to make a conscious effort to actually make a difference as a brand. And like I say, I think personally, we actually feel quite passionate about it, not just from a corporate responsibility.
Definitely. I think we talk about it as a brand as kind of looking after our mother nature, looking after her. And that's almost inviting the world as such into our female family, as she is a woman and she looks after us. And I think, as Dan said, it feels personal. I think the brand is so much bigger. The business is so much bigger than Dan and I now, but I think some of those kind of deep-rooted decisions obviously naturally do still come from the two of us. But we wanted to make sure at the same time that we didn't lose that luxury feel of our product, so we didn't want to have to lose the quality. And I think that it's been really challenging but really exciting at the same time to know that we're able to still offer such beautiful products, packaging, everything that we do is still really gorgeous. And I think one really nice touch that we have, an example of how we ensure people still feel that value, is so the bags that the products that they now come in that you can then rip open and grab your product out. They're obviously made from like a recycled plastic, and it might essentially on the journey get a bit bruised and scratched. And I think we've got, I'm trying to think exactly what the phrase is, but on the outside of the package we say something like, my marks and scars just mark a part of my journey to you. And it's kind of reminding you as a woman that, your stretch marks and your cellulite and all those natural things on your body are part of your journey. And then we've kind of tied that into this green sustainability message. So I think we're trying to make sure that people really engage with it and notice it, so that they think, oh, okay, I'm actually contributing myself now as a customer to the planet, which is really cool.
It's also a real challenge being an underwear brand as well, because I think there's a lot of developments in regards to suppliers that are going into general apparel, everyday wear, but there's not huge investment in regards to other companies going into laces and embroideries that go into a bra, because obviously the more companies that do it, the more accessible this kind of stuff comes, and the more commercially viable it is. At the moment, we're taking massive hits on our margins and not passing that on to the consumer. We're actually swallowing that ourselves. Like I say, because not a lot of the big boys are doing it, it's still a very challenging thing to do, but totally worth it, obviously.
Yeah, and being the brand that can lead the way in the underwear space for, making a mark in, for sustainability is golden ticket really for us.
Yeah, especially for fashion, being one of a large polluter and using a lot of water and resources. So the fact that you are asking for these recycled materials, more sustainable materials, is also going to shift the industry as well. So yeah, really, really excited.
Exactly.
One of the biggies as well is we're not fast fashion. We market ourselves as the opposite of fast fashion. So this isn't a case of buying, because obviously we sell apparel as well. This isn't a case of going to a fast fashion brand and grabbing something new every week. The idea behind us is that you buy something and it lasts, which massively contributes towards sustainability as well, because it's obviously creating less pollution in the world from the off. Yeah.
How do you guys pick different charities to support and align yourselves with an initiative?
I think, so our Fill Your Breast campaign, which is the campaign we run every October for breast cancer awareness, I suppose it feels natural as an underwear brand for one of the first kind of charitable campaigns that we ran, for that to be around breast cancer awareness, something obviously that's so poignant for women and men, but proportionately more for women. And I think that whole campaign essentially was built to raise awareness. We raised donations and we raised some incredible money for our two chosen charities, Trekstock and Copperfield. But the awareness that we can then push out across our social audience is just so powerful. And I think, again, comes back to why we do our sustainability work as well, is that it's personal to Dan and I, and to be able to have that impact on young women and make them kind of sit and think and realise how important this stuff is. I mean, our audience is really young, and I think those people think that, you only get breast cancer when you're old, and there's this kind of rhetoric around it that is so false, that the relationships that I personally built with the girls in that campaign that we now work with every year, that we call our legends, they're just incredible women, and I think they've all had these experiences themselves. So to allow our brand to then speak out in such that authentic voice that says, look, just sit back and think about this and check your boobs. It just, I don't know how you'd word it, Dan, but it just felt like it's something that we had to do. It was a responsibility to make sure that our community were looking after their health. I mean, there's obviously other charitable campaigns that we do that maybe we don't sing and shout about as loudly as we do with our breast cancer awareness campaign. We've got this huge voice now across social. We need to make sure that we're using it in a responsible way.
In a sense, sharing the spotlight and the platform that you guys have.
Yeah, exactly.
I know that you guys had an actually historic year last year. With all of us being at home, we all need some great comfy loungewear. So yeah, talk through some of the growing pains of last year, because I know that as you're growing, you also had to deal with the logistics and the restrictions with COVID and everything like that. How did you manage 2020?
Yes, we've seen unprecedented growth that very few companies have experienced over the past 5 years, but the last 12 months has kind of just been a different animal. I think when you couple that with the fact, obviously we've had COVID and COVID restrictions, it's been massively challenging from a logistical point of view mainly. We're very lucky in the fact that we've got a really young workforce. I think we've probably got an average age of about 25, 26 maybe. So when we went into lockdown in the UK, pretty much for the flick of a switch, everyone went to remote working in the office, short of, I think it was obviously the warehouse guys had to still work because they couldn't do their job from home. But yeah, with overnight, we went to remote working. The next morning after we sent the message out, everyone came and grabbed their laptops and anything they need from the office. And they've pretty much been remote working for, I think, the past 12 months. And it was seamless. It's just insane, really, because before that, we were in-house 5 days a week. And to have a change like that, but no real stress on the workforce or output as a brand is pretty magic. I think a testament to obviously the guys that work here. But then from the logistical point of view, it's a whole new bunch of complications because you physically need people to actually get that product out the door. You've obviously got social distancing. You've got massive problems with couriers because they've got the same issues in regards to people and space and that nightmare. You've then got massive delays in regards to goods coming in on the seas and in the ports. So we've just gone through a year where you've got massive logistical nightmares. And we've grown over 250% up year on year, which is just insane, really, especially when you're starting to get to the size and numbers that you're talking about actually going out the door every day. It's just like, again, I think it's testament to the team that work behind the scenes, essentially.
The magic for me, and I think the same for Dan, is the way that we've managed to retain our culture and the way that we call them our loungers, so our team, essentially, the way they have responded to the pandemic and essentially kept our business scaling at this crazy pace is seriously impressive, and I think something we're incredibly proud of. But I think we've put a lot of effort as founders and with a few key people across the team, such as our head of people, Georgia, is to ensure that everyone still feels connected, because that is really how we create what we do, is the fact that our team are so damn good. And I think, we've done yoga from home, we've done tea at 3, which is where we all jump on with random groups, because obviously too many of us also jump on one. with a cup of tea, because we all love a good brew, and just chat and play games and be daft. We've done Dan's Devilish Dungeon quiz a couple of times, which Dan will kill me for saying, but just making sure that our culture stays sound, so that the moment we all step back into the office, there's still that magic there between everyone. But also we've recruited at such a crazy pace through the pandemic as well, that we've over doubled the team, would you say, Dan?
Yeah.
And that is due to demand, obviously, and due to the growth that we've had over that period. But to then make sure that all those people feel connected in that group of loungers was a challenge, but I think one that hopefully they'd all say they've loved the experience, even working at home. And I think something really exciting that is happening now is that we've just kind of expressed to everyone at work that we've made a decision to move into a bigger HQ, and we'll be moving there sort of the early part of this summer. And now there's this real buzz amongst everyone that A, one day we're going to get back in the office, and B, it's going to be this beautiful shiny new glass building that is kind of built to be the best HQ in the world, essentially. It's been a really strange year, but one where I think everyone just comes out stronger, essentially.
I read that beautiful article where you're taking over the old Oracle building, and there's going to be like a cinema, there's going to be a yoga studio. That's super exciting. It's
probably the biggest risk we've taken as a company to date. It's a huge, I guess, level up from a business point of view for us, with obviously that comes with the overheads of running a larger company. But this is to essentially future-proof our scalability as a brand, definitely in the UK. We've had massive growing pains where I think we've had 5 HQ moves in 5 years now, which is a nightmare in itself. So this is a huge step up to kind of secure Lounge's future. And we're investing massively in the facilities and the kind of culture that we can then breed at this new HQ. And it's putting investment into the guys that work at Lounge, and then also to attract that new world-class talent, which is inevitably going to be needed to where we want to get to as an ambitious brand that we are.
The ambition is getting fueled by new talents, as Dan and Mel are planning to double their team this year. In addition to the new, exciting headquarters in United Kingdom, the duo also wants to set up offices in United States and Germany, all the while ensuring the team's culture and spirit are at the heart of their expansion.
It's definitely, this is quite cliche in today's age because everyone seems to say the same thing, but it's definitely a culture first thing for us. Personally, I don't look at people's qualifications. It doesn't make a difference if you've been at university or not. We hire a lot of young people, like I touched on earlier, but it is very much, are you going to fit into the business from a cultural point of view? We're very lucky in that we've built this community of people that are so close and have created such amazing friendships that when you work here, it just feels like a really, I guess, energetic environment because everyone's friends. It doesn't feel like work. And I think that's one of the major successes to Lounge's growth, because everyone's so passionate about their jobs. So it's a case of skills you can learn, right? But you can't learn to be a decent person. It's definitely a culture first thing for us.
Definitely. Couldn't have put it better myself.
Nice. Growing the business, are there any apps or tools that you've really enjoyed building your store or just operating the business to make it more smoothly?
It depends at what stage I think you're talking about in the business. There's different apps that we used when we were smaller to the size that we are now. But I think what Shopify allows you to do is essentially scale a business without millions being invested in.
We also didn't have a tech background, so having Shopify at your fingertips that just allows us to kind of jump in, so easy to learn and create a pretty cool looking website, even from day one. And obviously now it's completely evolved and changed. I think one thing we always say about Shopify is that there's a lot of platforms that over the years we've outgrown, and you have to kind of move on. But Shopify has literally seen us through, and we know we can scale the same pace that we are now and some. And Shopify will still be kind of at that core, really, which makes everything super easy for us.
And there's apps that allow integrations to become a lot easier, like literally a simple plugin, like with your accounting softwares and your CRM platforms. Most of them have partnerships with Shopify. So it's a case of downloading an app and just plugging it in, which is priceless again. But like I say, it depends, because there was different apps that we used back in the early days to the ones that we use now. We used in the early days even apps as small as, I think it's called Orderly Emails, which allowed you to generate a packing list and an invoice.
that we would then walk around with a piece of paper around the warehouse with the couple of invoices and make sure we sent the right thing to the right people. Bonkers. I think Launchpad is a big one in terms of an app that we rely on, I guess, Dan, and especially as we started to scale and we started to launch more product. We used to do that very manually, and I would literally tick the products that we wanted to launch that particular time, make sure, right, okay, 7 p.m, click, go live. And now obviously Launchpad is great. You can make sure that everything goes live all at once, and you've got this gorgeous launch, because we launch product a couple of times a month now.
Launchpad, I think those kind of things are becoming valuable as you start to scale and you start to build out localized stores. Because there becomes a point where you can't just manually do it. It's relatively stress-free when you're managing one store and you're doing a small launch. When you've got 8 stores over a large collection that's going live, it's just physically impossible. You need those kind of technical capabilities.
Yeah, you walk into Black Friday with that kind of pressure, and wow, you would crack.
I wanted to ask about Black Friday. Actually, it's like one of the biggest sale periods for you guys. How did you manage campaigns and also the logistics behind the scenes?
From a logistical side, it's very, very hard. We can do up to like 25% of our yearly revenue in a week. It's that concept around scaling up massively over such a short period of time. And a lot of it comes down to, in distribution in these days, a lot of it's still manpower. So it's how do you go from 0 to 100 times that in 24 hours? It's a massive complication and stress on businesses in our shoes. But I think these peaks around Black Fridays are such a new problem as well. It's not like it's been going on for the last 50 years and people have come up with perfect solutions. They are still headaches, and there are ultimately, even with the businesses that have got it down to a T, there are ultimately delays in those periods. You can't physically scale up 1,000% overnight. It's just not possible. There are going to be delays, but obviously we're pretty damn good at distribution as a company, and we've had those growing pains over the last 5 years. But there is still an element of delays. I don't think there'll be a way around that, just because the peaks are so high. But yeah, we do our best.
Yeah, I think the pressure from the consumer at that time of year as well is like, wow, if your website does crash, or if your order does take X amount of time to get to that person, it's evidential out there. You see a lot of brands get their reputation just falls through the floor if you just have that one tiny error that happens throughout that sale period, especially at the beginning of that sale. So I think we put a huge amount of time throughout you finish one Black Friday, you're already thinking about, right, what the hell are we going to do next year? It's bonkers.
There is stress from a distribution point of view, but more so in the last couple of years is then the stress from a technical point of view, in just, can your site and systems that then essentially feed through to the warehouse, can they cope with that level of traffic and that volume? You'll find that if you haven't got the right systems in place that all connect to essentially put that product out the door, if they can't cope with it, they'll collapse, and then you've got a much bigger problem on your hands. It's actually putting that infrastructure in place from a tech stack point of view to cope with it, not just a case of actually being able to pack and get it out the door. That's obviously a whole other problem in itself. And
then on top of that, you've got the fact that social is so instant, and we've built this community of people that feel like they can chat with us through DMs, through comments. We'll reply. We're there for them. We're here to chat. We're here to hear your feedback. The minute you do anything wrong through that Black Friday week, wow, it's like bam, and we've obviously then got this full team of people that are there ready to make sure that people don't panic. Your cart's not going to disappear, or whatever their questions are. Yeah, bonkers.
Has there been ever, I guess, a challenge with pricing around Black Friday? Because I know that you want to have this perceived value for your customers, but you also want to make sure that it doesn't discount too much so that it takes and detracts away from your brand.
I don't think it's Black Friday that does that. I think this is where a lot of brands go wrong, and they'll get themselves into a rut where they're going from sale to sale to sale. We do 2 big sales a year, and that's it. We do Black Friday and our birthday sale. Short of that, we don't go into sale, which I think builds that brand reputation and that kind of real value that you're getting for your product. I think that is where a lot of company get into trouble, where they'll see quick wins when they're young and they're going into sales and they're making a lot of money, and they'll start to do it more and more often, and you totally lose your brand authentication. The problem is your consumers cotton on and they won't buy unless you're in a sale, because you're going into them so often. So they're waiting for the sale. So you find that when you're not in sale, you haven't got a business. Then you get you sale to sale to sale. But yeah, we're very strict in that essence, that we're not a fast fashion brand. We're not a brand that runs on sales. We do 2 main ones a year, and that's it.
I know that you guys are also looking to expand to America with an office, and as well as Germany. What are some things that you guys are prepping for as you're kind of expanding your footprint globally?
I think one of the issues we're starting to come along with, especially with places in Europe like Germany, France, and the US, is that you can target them from the UK and do a good job you can in regards to localization, but you can't really get their culture unless you're actually German and you're living in Germany. You can't mimic that. It's very hard for us to understand the German way of doing things and who's popular and what's cool over there, unless you're actually on the ground in Germany. It becomes a case where if you really want to break that market, go big there, you need to be immersed in that market and you need to understand how things work. And you just can't do that from the UK and being brought up in the UK. Hence why international offices start to build out.
Balance that, obviously, stay true to your core as a brand, but make sure that tone of voice actually makes sense out there in that culture, whether that be in Germany, as Dan said, or in the US, or wherever that might be, having those boots on the ground actually out there in that space. And even people within your team that then are, from that history, I guess, is that's their livelihood was brought up there. It then allows you to really start to understand different cultures, I guess, yeah.
You've got obvious challenges in the likes of France and Germany because there's a language barrier. But even if you go to the US where it's the same language, they speak differently. Even when you go down to East and West Coast, it's the same language, but the way they speak is differently. It's getting that real localization where it feels like a local brand.
I wanted to ask you guys about working together as life partners and how you intertwine personal, professional lives so seamlessly together.
Good question. I don't think I've ever been asked that before. To
be honest with you, it's never. You hear about a lot of couples that go into business, and they always seem to moan, but it's never really felt like a challenge. To be honest with you, like I said, we've been doing this for 5 years now, and work together every single day and live together. It doesn't seem to have caused us any problems. I think what helps is that we do very different parts of the business. Because Mel's, like I say, is on the brand side and the creative side, and I'm more on the numbers and strategy and scaling side. So what we do is very different. So we're not under each other's feet all the time. I think that does make a big difference.
I mean, we knew each other back in primary school, and then we've been together since we were teens. And prior to Lounge, we started a small fashion boutique together. I guess, yeah, it almost feels even weirder now because we've had a child together, so I'm now working from home, obviously with baby crying somewhere downstairs with my mom. And that is now the bit that feels weird, is that we're not together every day. It feels really unnatural and kind of like losing a left arm.
I think on the flip side, in my eyes, to get a brand like Lounge off the ground and to scale it at the rate that we have, you've truly got to live it. It's a lifestyle. It's not a job. So if my partner wasn't the other half of Lounge, I don't know how it'd work, because I don't know how the other half would appreciate all the hours that go into it day and night. Then you've got to come home and essentially still carry on working. It's okay for us because we're both under the same umbrella and we're both in the same situation. But I don't know how you'd balance that if the other one wasn't in the same shoes as you. I think you'd have to have a very understanding partner.
So you guys started dating when you were teenagers, but at which point did you feel like, we could actually be business partners and we can actually work together?
I think, so what happened in the really early days, when Mel came out of uni, we started up a fashion brand that was essentially just bringing in off-the-line dresses from China, and we'd just sell them on eBay. So it was a gradual process, right? And then we built a website with that brand, and then eventually started Lounge. So it wasn't just like like a line in the sand. It was gradual. We started doing bits and bobs together, and then eventually started Lounge. So it was eased in.
Yeah, definitely.
Do you have any like tips or suggestions for other couples who actually want to start a business together?
Like I say, I think if you're going to go into it, in my eyes, I know a lot of people go on and on about work-life balance, which I totally agree is hugely important. But in the early days, and if you're scaling a fast brand, this is a lifestyle. It's not a job. It is day and night, and that's the reality of it. And it might not be a reality that a lot of people like.
And I think as a couple, you've got to be prepared to challenge each other. And I think we've been together for, Dan, how long have we been together? Can you remember?
12 years.
12 years?
Yeah.
13 years. So you, over that time, you learn what buttons not to press from on a personal level. You know where you stand, but from a business point of view and a brand point of view, it's kind of sometimes you've got to press those buttons to create what we do. So I think understanding that challenging each other does actually create the magic that we do at Lounge. I know Dan said that we're in different parts of the business, but there's also a huge breadth of stuff that we work on together. Obviously, that's natural. Respect each other, know what you're good at, and know where you overlap. Just ride the wave, I guess.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Dan and Mel, for being here with us today. And I'm so excited to see what Lounge does next.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having us.
Oh, thank you so much. It was great chatting with you.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Shopify Masters. My name is Shuang, and if you enjoyed Dan and Mel's business journey of starting and building lounge underwear, please give us a review on our listening platform so our show can be discovered by others. Until next time on Shopify Masters.